Hey guys, I'm in airport, but I need to do this. CMS just released their new funding for MA and Part D. It's coming in, it's not going to be 0.09%, it's coming in at 2.48%. And you're going to read headlines that will phrase this as a positive, but actuarially, this is really a tight year. And in tight years, things tend to create risk both for agents, the clients, and the carriers themselves. That 2.48% number, it's not a clean increase. That figure is a net of multiple moves. We're talking medical cost, inflation trends, star rating changes, the risk adjustment changes, and the coding assumptions that carriers are bringing in through the bid season. In other words, the 2.48% is what's left after CMS already accounts for the cost of rising inflation and healthcare and policy adjustments. So while that is technically a raise, it's really more of a compressed margin environment that we're in right now. And when those margins compress, you're going to have carriers that respond. That's why you're seeing the things you're seeing. So if you want to understand why, we need to look at the actuarial math behind Medicare Advantage. So MAs today are facing medical cost trends anywhere from 5 to the 8% range, depending on the market. And the way we can prove that is looking at how CMS sets the cap on HMO and PPO max out-of-pockets. We've seen that trend double over the past decade. It's because the max out-of-pocket is following true medical inflation. You know, specialty drugs, hospital stays, specialist utilizations through the roof, and you add another 2 to 4% pressure in many of the markets out there just because of fraud, waste, and abuse. So that pressure and risk adjustment tightening, you're easily looking at 7 to 10% needed just to maintain the status quo. Now compare that to 2.48% revenue growth. That is a tight margin squeeze. So plans are facing margin compression. They're not just going to absorb the loss. They are going to have to adjust their plan design. They're going to have to adjust the strategy they have with networks, in-network facilities, or on PPOs, and the benefit structures that they're offering. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't think. Anyways, one of the more important announcements here in CMS tightening their risk adjustment mechanics is around chart review diagnosis. So CMS is moving to exclude certain diagnoses unless they're tied to actual risk care encounters. Now that matters because a lot of carriers rely heavily on retrospective chart review and coding optimization to increase their risk scores, not current chart reviews, right? So that revenue is going to become less reliable, and those plans effectively are going to be losing funding without losing members, which is the pitch. Creates like a silent margin compression. You've got the same members with the same premiums, but because you don't have an updated chart review, even if you have the same expectations for them, now you get paid less revenue. So when that happens, their adjustments show up in their bid cycle, and that's currently where we're at right now for a carrier. As a consumer, they're going to see lower benefits across the board. So dental benefits, smaller over-the-counter allowances, reduced Part B givebacks, higher copays, narrower networks, more aggressive utilization management. Importantly, though, the plans are going to try and look as competitive as they can on paper because they have to stay alive in this market. Zero premiums are still going to exist, and they're going to look strong, but the operation model behind them will have to be tighter and more controlled. That's why HMO is the future for MAs. PPO got us here, but HMO will keep them here. The impact from the marketing grid is going to be large, right? The provider access is going to have to become more structured. That's why I believe that HMOs will keep Medicare Advantage grounded. I'm not saying it doesn't lose any space, but it keeps them grounded. As an agent, your risk increases. So we're in expansion years across the board with the baby boomers, right? So the benefits that you're used to and the aggressive plan selling you're used to won't be the same this year. You know, in those tighter years, the same benefit-rich plans become more fragile. So any plan that you've sold that relies on aggressive growth assumption with like heavy coding or lower margin structures, probably a better word to say to it, is very vulnerable to this kind of change in the market. So you're going to have a separation then between stronger and weaker contracts from MA carriers. A carrier that has a strong star rating with a strong network and more stable risk models is going to hold up better in AEP 27. If you're selling a carrier who's relying on aggressive growth strategies with much looser cost control, that pressure is either going to put them out of the market or they're going to have to shift. So the tight year we're in right now, and it's been 3 years, it's not going to slow down anytime soon. You're seeing fewer PPOs. You're seeing more managed structures. You're seeing PPOs that are inherently allowing loss control that is overutilization cost, and carriers can't sustain that kind of profit loss forever, right? So as an agent, the economic shift we're at least entering in with this announcement is tightened. Review the carriers you're a part of. Review the marketing spend that you're a part of. You're going to see broker comp that's cut even more than it already is, especially in the PPO arena. This type of environment is going to accelerate that trend. Maybe the broader takeaway from the adjustment, the 2.48% increase, is the discipline is returning to Medicare Advantage. So for years, MA market has been in expansion mode with rich benefits, broad networks, and very aggressive growth, right? But that growth is slowing because the cost is growing. So as a carrier, you have to shift towards stability and profitability. Think of it this way. Last year, 26 AEP, the increase in funding was 5.06%, and we saw the damage that happened. This year, it's almost half of that, and get ready for the damage that is coming. Also, with the star rating decline, and the risk adjustment change using version 28 for Medicare. Anyways, so if you're an agent who's focusing only on rich benefits, you're going to unintentionally place more clients into more volatile plans, and you will pay the price for it. Your consumers are going to face lots of plan volatility in the MA market for AEP 27. Lots more hospitals leaving, lots more doctors leaving, lots more ambulatory surgical centers leaving, because MAs won't be able to afford to pay them what they historically have paid. So the plans that you've seen that look really attractive on the PPO side, the stability is just not going to be there. And the 2.48% can be positive in that it's more than 0.09%, but actuarially, this is a stress test for Medicare Advantage in general. It's a stress test for the weak PPO economics, the coding-dependent revenue models, and any carrier that has had an extremely aggressive growth model, because stability is the name of the game now. Historically, when MA enters this type of an environment, the market shifts from growth to control, and you're going to see carriers that are prioritizing predictability, discipline, and long-term profitability rise to the top, right? It's going to be an interesting AEP. If you're in this business, continue in this business. If you are thinking about joining this business, join this business. This is not a bad time to get in. This is just a good time to become more understanding of the environment that's taking place. We're in a shift that has real implications for carriers, for agents, for consumers, and it's going to continue that way moving forward, but we are moving forward. And as we're moving forward, move forward with us.